Welcome to the Hello Flow podcast, a space where we bridge together professional success and career alignment with personal well-being. I'm your host, Casey Cunliffe. Join me in conversations around driving your career while also being mindful of your overall well-being. At a time when many people are awakening to their soul's purpose and navigating that messy but magical middle, I offer this space for personal and professional growth and alignment, and a place to ground and support you in your daily grind. After tuning into this podcast, I hope you receive the empowering counsel and actionable tools to usher in more ease and flow in your life, and equip you as you discover, develop, and evolve your Dharma. Now on to the episode. In this week's episode, I am so excited to share with you a conversation I had with Joy Batra, who is the author of the book, The Freelance Mindset: Unleashing Your Side Hustles for Better Work, Play, and Life. I invited Joy on the podcast because I thought her story was so fascinating and inspiring, and I think you will too. After earning her JD MBA from Harvard, Joy was on the path that she was conditioned to do career-wise while growing up, which was to become a full-time lawyer at a firm and become successful and gain prestige by climbing the ladder. However, upon graduation and after being offered a traditional job at a law firm, she decided to utilize the gap in between to pursue a secret dream of becoming a Bollywood actress, while also juggling several freelance and consulting gigs. This decision led her down a path to a fulfilling life with a tailor-made career she built on her terms. So if you are listening to this podcast, you are not only career-driven, but also care about your well-being while pursuing and embodying your Dharma and soul's purpose in life. I think this interview will help provide yet another perspective for you to think about as you continue to grow and develop yourself and live authentically no matter what stage you are in your life. In this conversation, Joy talks about one of the ways you can shape your work-life harmony so that you can live a life filled with creativity, joy, and impact across your career and personal life. No ladders required. So without further delay, on to the interview. Welcome to the Hello Flow podcast, Joy. I'm so excited for you to be here.
I'm so excited to be here too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited because I heard about your story on another podcast and thought it was so fascinating to hear that you created this career path, a portfolio career, I think is what the term was. And, to have you go through traditional schooling, you have your JD MBA from Harvard, you're in the legal space, but you also pursued your creative interest as a Bollywood actress. So I love your story. I would love to start off with asking you to tell your story. What do you do now? What led you to, what you do today? What were some of your successes? What, drove you to kind of lead the life you have today?
So today, when I'm asked what I do, I generally answer that I'm a corporate/creative. And the reason I answer this way is within each bucket, there are a number of different things that I do. So on the corporate side these days, I have a little consulting business, which is just me. And I do freelancing, which can range from compliance and strategy to legal, to a number of like go-to-market and other kind of business related options. Then on the creative side, that's its own bucket. And I've got, writing, I've got sharing the message of the book, I've got a little Bollywood dance, and every now and then I also do some acting. But if you had asked me 10 years ago, I think, that was around the time I was graduating from law school and business school, actually just had my 10-year reunion, I had no idea any of this was in store for me. I had actually back then kind of, as far in the forward as I could see, I kind of thought that going to a law firm was the absolute best thing that I could do for myself. I thought it would give me the most options, it would be the most prestigious, make the most money. All of the things were kind of aligned, and I had my life plan set. And so I had accepted a job that was supposed to start in, I think, like August or September of that year. And after graduation in May, I took the bar exam, and then I had a little gap of about a month between the bar exam and when I was supposed to start work. And in that time, I was thinking, this might be my last time to kind of be a kid. I could have one last adventure, like a professional bachelorette party, and then I will just go back and I will be an adult and I will start my brand new life like I had planned to. So the thing is, when I was planning what this one last adventure was, I had this little secret dream that I never told anybody, which was I had wanted to be an extra in a Bollywood movie. And it was a little fantasy that I was afraid to share with anybody, but it was just my dream. And one of my friends from college actually went on to become a Bollywood actress. We were both on a dance team together. And so all throughout law school, I would look at her photos and I would think, wow, she's dancing under palm trees. Like, how can I do that? And so I actually messaged her during this break and I said, how did you get into acting? And she told me about this acting school in Mumbai that she had attended. And as it happens, most of my family lives in Mumbai, and they actually had a 3-week acting course that was exactly the 3 weeks that I had off. So I was like, well, I have to take this acting class and maybe I can get like an extra part in a movie. I took the class, I ended up meeting a producer and ended up getting an audition and then a talent management agreement. And then my head exploded. I did not know what to do with myself because I had, on the one hand, accepted this law firm job. I also had 6-figure student loans. And then on the other hand, this little dream I had that I hadn't told anybody about was getting a chance to maybe kind of come true. I didn't know what to do. And I had a lot of soul searching to do and a lot of anxiety in that period. And luckily, I had a couple of friends who were in my corner and they said, this is once in a lifetime. Like, you can always get a job in an office somewhere. You've got to try this. And luckily, I listened. And so I ended up letting go of the law firm job, which was difficult, but then moving to India, with like one suitcase and figuring it out. And that's kind of how freelancing came in to save me because I did have these 6-figure student loans. And I also needed time for auditions. So I started looking for some like part-time work that I could do a couple hours a day and then have the rest of the time free to study Hindi, train in acting, and then also go for these auditions. And that was a life path that I just had no idea was available to me. Nobody told me in school that other than just getting a full-time job or being unemployed, there was this third option where I could be partially employed. I could be employed at 2 places. I could be in different industries at the same time. It was wild. And I had no idea, nothing prepared me for that moment. And I was just kind of in shock and disbelief the entire time I was there. But my life has never been the same since because in the 10 years that have followed, it's really been kind of evaluating this portfolio, changing components of it, but always, never being able to go back to that linear way of thinking again.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that will expand a lot of people listening to know that, yeah, there are other options. You don't have to just be in the creative realm or just be in that linear corporate realm. You can create this portfolio and shift it throughout the years, depending on where your body's leading you. And I love how you shared that when you had that 1-month break in between, this like serendipitous opportunity came and you just followed it. Like you followed what your body did and look where it took you. And it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, 10 years later, you're doing exactly that. It led you kind of to the next thing and to the next thing. So that is so exciting. And I love how you used the term corporate/creative. Can you kind of go like, how did you come up with that term and how do you like define that for yourself and then how you see it in others?
One of the interesting things I learned while writing The Freelance Mindset was really the range in activities people do and how their audience will perceive them. So, one of the first things that happens when you meet somebody new is they ask you, oh, what do you do? And this is a really loaded question. And it means so many different things. It means how much do you earn? How do you spend your days? Where do you fit in society? All of these things. But what the person is really asking generally in a social context is, who are you? And we don't always give that answer. So I actually interviewed 50 freelancers and I did a lot of research on elevator pitches to understand how can we share a little bit more authentically and get to that level of connection. And just like with jobs, there is kind of a spectrum with elevator pitches or answering what you do. So on the one end, you could really just say, I'm a blah, 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 I'm a lawyer, and end it there. And that's one thing. And you've not really revealed anything else about your personality. kind of limiting. On the other hand, you could say, well, I'm a lawyer, I'm a writer, I'm a dancer, I'm an actor, and the person's eyes glaze over and they're like, is she going to stop anytime soon? Like, what is she telling me? So those two extremes don't work. What I really discovered is that you can answer with two or three things that you do. So two is interesting because we like to put people in a box. We say, oh, she's a lawyer, therefore she's not funny. I don't know. I'm not funny. So as it happens, that one's true. But, we say you're either this or that. And when you have a pair, then it suddenly becomes duality. You say, oh, I'm this and this. And all of a sudden people wonder, oh, what kind of person lives at those two identities? What is in between those two poles? What are the connections? So that's how I landed on corporate and creative. I will also say that you could give three things because that's kind of the upper limit of information we can process. So if I had a third I wanted to share, like a lawyer, writer, dancer, let's say, that would be fine too. For me, my portfolio is kind of rebalancing fairly regularly. So I tend to stay with this one title, but that was kind of the journey of figuring out how much to share in the early elevator pitch or in that early introduction so that there's enough of my personality there, but also some layers to the onion to peel back as we continue talking.
I love that corporate/creative. And you had mentioned that you kind of shift the pieces here and there. Can you talk a little bit about that, like what the pieces are and what led you to kind of change the pieces?
Yeah, so the great thing about a portfolio career is kind of like an investment portfolio is you can rebalance it, and in fact you should rebalance it when things change. And three things change: either your inner state changes, your immediate circle changes, or the market changes, and you need to be paying attention to all three. And so for me, my portfolio, how it looked 10 years ago, was in the morning I was a strategy consultant, and in the afternoon I was an actor, and that was effectively it. I had two things in my portfolio, so I didn't need to come up with a complicated elevator pitch. But over time, each one has kind of grown roots and has a variety of different activities with it. So right now, my portfolio, depending on which corporate clients I have and what products and projects I'm working on, that really will vary depending on if it's, strategy, is it legal, is it marketing? I've worked in all different realms. And so the ratio of those products and projects is going to change. And then the same thing is happening on the creative side. So when I'm, under contract with a publisher to write a book, writing is effectively my entire creative outlet, except dance will always be there. I've never really monetized it except for one glorious day, which was just an aberration. But, no one's really going to pay me to dance. I will not be able to live off of that. But that's there because it drives me and it allows me to do the writing and the creative and the consulting and everything else that's part of my portfolio. It's a little bit of a fuel in this engine. And so that component is there, but the ratio depends on the season of life. It depends on the deadlines that I have going on, depends on my physical stamina and the opportunities that are available. So the seasons, they change, and just being mindful of that and giving yourself the grace and the flexibility to allow them to change as you grow is super important.
Yeah, I love how you explain that. Depending on, well, you have those three factors, and then it depends on your own season of life. It depends on what's going on across those three different areas for you to evaluate and to keep it flexible and to give yourself that grace as you move through it. And I think it also sounds like it's for someone who likes and is not afraid of change because there will be change throughout time. And I think it comes, or this kind of conversation in your book comes at a time where a lot of people are thinking about, okay, is this, the traditional way I've been earning a living or the way I've been spending my days? How can I shift it to where it's more aligned to my joy and my truth? So what kind of thoughts or advice do you have for someone who's thinking of kind of moving into and creating more of a portfolio career outside of like maybe just something that's linear?
I think the first thing to do is really allow yourself the ability to make small changes. I think a lot of times when we, feel like we want to make a change in our life, we think it has to be wholesale, all or nothing. Like
Yeah.
you feel the pressure to just be like, oh, I'm going to quit my job and go all in on this business. But that's actually not doing a service to yourself or to the project that you are trying to grow, whether that's a new business or a new aspect of your portfolio. And so the advice that I'd really give in this moment is to think about what your core needs are. And your needs are really, you've got to take care of the financial and the physical. So make sure you have enough of a cushion or enough of kind of a fractional client or a job or something that will keep you stable, because that stability is your foundation that allows you to take risks. I'm going to use a dance metaphor. I don't know how many listeners have had to jump and dance, but to jump, you really have to bend your knees and really get into the floor. And that gives you the ability to then spring up and pop into the air. The deeper your foundation, the deeper your roots, the taller you can grow or pop into the sky. Now I've got two metaphors. Can you believe I wrote a book? This makes no sense. But I think you understand, like, the stronger your foundation, the greater the risk you can take. And so if you are thinking about, going more toward your joy, really understand what role that is going to serve for you. Because I've talked to a lot of freelancers who did want to monetize their joy because, of course, it's their joy. How would you not want to? But turning your joy into your profession really changes your relationship to that work. All of a sudden, it's not necessarily your joy anymore. It's your income source. It's your livelihood. These are your competitors and also your friends, maybe. You know, Understand why you're freelancing, understand what you're hoping to get out of it, and really understand what's at stake. If you're kind of thinking about adding more joyful or inspired pieces to your portfolio, know how that's going to affect you and give yourself flexibility. If it starts to be, you know, a relationship that you want to change and you want to evolve, understand that that's actually not a failure. And the reason I say this is I've met a number of actors in the past couple of months, and I think I would put myself in this category, where we had this conversation of, well, I was an actor and now I have a job. Does that make me not an artist anymore? And it was a little bit of an existential crisis for a moment. And then we realized that actually having a job or having some sort of steady something that we do made us do better in our auditions. It made us feel more free. It took the pressure off in that room. So whatever you can do that will take the pressure off the thing you love so that you can continue to love it, I think is incredibly important.
I see that also in the coaching industry too, where if you tend to, step into coaching as a full-time job, there's that pressure of wanting to, because it's your income source versus if you had less pressure on it with income coming from other sources, then it brings back that joy and that purpose that you had initially wanted to kind of step into that career. So it sounds like similar for any kind of creative endeavor is taking away that pressure because you're not doing it necessarily for, the money is bringing in. You're doing it because you have a lot of passion and purpose in that specific endeavor. So that's like interesting to hear that it's coming out in the creative part of acting as well.
It's important to know why you're doing that. That's one lens. If you're doing it for the joy of it, make sure it can stay joyful. If this is the skill that you absolutely do want to monetize, then by all means go all in and figure out how to make it into a business. But I think sometimes we're just not clear on what outcome we're hoping this new addition to our portfolio will actually bring us.
How does someone know if a portfolio career is a path for them to consider versus a more linear career?
That's an interesting question. And I want to take the opinion that a portfolio career is for everyone, but you can have your portfolio be 100% one thing.
Yeah.
I think that our portfolios, they can be diversified at a moment in time. They can also be diversified over time. So if
Yeah.
first you're a lawyer, then you're an actor, and then you're a writer, that's one portfolio. And if you're doing all three, in the course of a day, that's a different kind of portfolio. But I would really urge people to think about themselves holistically, because that's the beauty of a portfolio career is these different things that we do. They bring in different revenue. Some bring in zero, which is fine, but they might still belong there. And they serve different parts of ourselves. They allow us to get to know ourselves better, to give ourselves risk management. So, for example, one freelancer I interviewed, she was a dancer, a fabulous professional dancer, and also a tech UX designer. And she had a great performing career. And then the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden, performances disappeared overnight. An entire industry vanished. And luckily, she was freelancing in tech, and that business was able to carry her in so many ways throughout the next couple of years. So, a portfolio career can help you with your risk, it can help you with your income, and it can also help you get different sides of yourself to shine and to grow and have better skills and relationships. So, I personally think it's for everyone, but you can obviously balance the portfolio to whatever makes sense for your situation at this moment.
And I love how you mentioned you used a couple examples, one for yourself, saying how dancing as is part of your portfolio career and it's not monetized, but it allows you to show up fully in the other parts of your portfolio. And then same with the other example as, being able to bring in other sources of income that allow someone to then pursue their creative pursuits that they may not be bringing income for. So that's the point of like having that diverse portfolio. I talk a lot about Dharma and discovering and pursuing one's soul's purpose, which is really beyond someone's career, but rather like how you express yourself in all the different areas of life. So I can see how with a portfolio career, your Dharma can be expressed in different ways through these different type of outlets or platforms. What are your thoughts on how having a portfolio career fits in pursuing one's Dharma?
Yeah, I think that I love the concept of Dharma, and I know you define it very beautifully in one of your earlier podcast episodes. But I think it might be helpful for us to just take a moment and pause and define what Dharma means here. So it sounds like it can mean soul purpose. In my tradition, growing up kind of Hindu, Dharma meant for us duty and your responsibility to your family. And I think when you're thinking about a portfolio career, it can actually be both. It it, it's very hard to live your soul's purpose if you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
And if you give yourself the opportunity to have different experiences, to learn more about yourself, to grow outside of, what was maybe safe or comfortable for you, that gives you knowledge about yourself, about the world, maybe also concrete, intellectual book knowledge that you can then use. And all of that then enables you to contribute at a much higher level, a much more focused level. And I really think the portfolio career and Dharma, they can be very beautifully linked in that way.
Yeah, I love how you explain that because, Dharma is being able, or at least through the Ayurvedic lens, is being able to be your true self or, what your soul came here to express in this lifetime. And I think the way that you've outlined how a portfolio career can be built allows someone to live out their dharma because they're able to do it in these different forms. There is career dharma, but it's also, it's not all about like career or monetization. It's also in service to others as well, and including in service to yourself through any type of creative outlet. So, for a portfolio career, can you explain the relevance or the importance of building a portfolio career in today's world? And then also how someone can build one that's unique to them.
So, for today's world, in this moment that we're in of AI rising, economic instability, geopolitical potentially, everything is in change. The whole world is in flux, climate, you name it. That is incredibly important for you to have a portfolio career because we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what next month brings. And all of us have, I think pretty recently been surprised. 2020 was not that long ago. And all of us had plans for April that, rarely came to fruition. So we've been through this once before. And I think a portfolio career is really the way to kind of future-proof yourself against whatever is around the corner. We don't know what that is. And so if you're thinking and you want to take the example of layoffs, having a portfolio career is fantastic because if one client goes away, at least the rest of your portfolio is there. You're not going to have 100% of your income. It might be quite a hit you take, but you're not necessarily going to zero financially and also emotionally, which is incredibly important. And the same thing is true for if you take technology change and you take AI. we don't know necessarily what skills and what jobs are going to persist over the next few years. There's going to be change in our responsibilities. There's going to be change in the tasks that we do day to day and who does what. So again, giving yourself the opportunity to A, get different skills, and B, form different relationships, because the vast majority of your clients and your work is going to come from your relationships, is incredibly important to start with the portfolio career. Now, if you're thinking about how to get started with one, I think the first thing to do is kind of hone in on your specialty. Are you trying to offer something that is very similar to what you're doing already for work, or are you creating something completely new? You're going to need to spend some time coming up with your portfolio, cultivating relationships, maybe getting certifications or licenses if you need that. But the important thing is really, first, to take a small step, and second, to just keep moving, because action begets action. And once you start to get the wheels turning, you will build up momentum. You will start to meet new people, get new opportunities that can then expand from there. You may have to pivot. You may have to completely, change your portfolio, but you will get the skills you need day over day as long as you start moving forward. And I think that the last piece of advice I would offer on this is really coming back to the relationships, and wanted to remind everyone of that famous study by Mr. Granovetter, which was the strength of weak ties. And he found, I think back in the 70s, so 50 years ago, that the vast majority of people found their jobs through weak ties. So, their friend's friend or their neighbor's cousin or whatever, somebody they didn't know well. They just replicated that study a couple of years ago on LinkedIn with millions of LinkedIn profiles, and they found it's still true today. The vast majority of workers and the vast majority of freelancers are all getting their work through weak ties and their relationships. So to the extent that you can cultivate those, whatever that looks like for you, that might mean, becoming an influencer or a content creator, or it might just mean networking, going to other events. Make sure you're making time for that. Really, that is the number one thing you can do.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree in terms of where you kind of get your next, whether it's a traditional job or some kind of consulting or freelance opportunity. It's who you know, and who within your network, who knows people within, beyond their network that you can connect with you. So thanks for mentioning that. And so I'm actually curious about what's next for you, because you've mentioned that you've moved around the pieces in your portfolio. Can you talk a little bit about the journey, that any successes, or even if looking back, any kind of times you felt like you had to pivot and you were able to pivot and make, replace some of the pieces? I don't know if you have any examples there that you're willing to share.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's very simple. I have worked as a crypto lawyer for the past 6 years, and if anyone knows anything about crypto, it's that it has very dramatic highs and very dramatic lows. So over the past 6 years, there have been times when there was tons of work in the market, and then there have been times when the market is frostier. We call it crypto winter. And in those times, I'm really, really lucky that I have these other skills and these other relationships that I can then do work in finance, I'm working with kind of a creator economy startup, work in media, whatever that may be, leverage the similar skills that help me with kind of my primary focus, that can then be, transitioned to another industry or another company. And so that's something that I've gotten very well versed at in the past few years. And every time it's a little bit, there is always that uncertainty of where will be the next big client, when will be my next big project. And then, you start to attend events, you start to meet people and have conversations, and you may not know who these people are. It's not like I necessarily know somebody has a job. One example is at one point, I was a little frustrated with a corporate job I was working many years ago, and I took an acting class. And my scene partner actually needed a consultant, and they hired me for a strategy consulting project. But I didn't know that. I just wanted to take an acting class and do something different. So, as long as you are expanding your sphere and starting to meet new people, that will help you. And the other thing that I'd say really serves you well is learning what transferable skills you have, because everything you've done can help you in something else. And that's the beauty of a portfolio career, is you have so many skills to draw from. But learning how to articulate why acting in Bollywood, for example, makes me a better lawyer. Well, that makes sense because I think creatively, because I can communicate, because I have a different risk appetite, maybe. There are all kinds of factors that one narrative can tell about a person. And so, as you develop your portfolio career, really focus on the relationships and then really think about how to identify transferable skills.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing is transferable skills and being able to not only develop them, but communicate how the skills that you have can apply to whatever job switch or industry switch. And those transferable skills are in both creative and corporate as well. So thank you for going through that. One last thing I wanted to talk about is with this type of career path, do you ever find yourself either burnt out, or do you find yourself like, because you're able to create as much as you can your own schedule, how do you manage that? And how do you fit in things like self-care so you don't burn out?
It can be really hard to navigate burnout because one of the things, if you're a freelancer or even with a portfolio career, is sometimes you don't know when the busy season will come and you don't know how long it will last. Same for the slow season. And so I guess the best thing that helped me is, I think it's been 2 years now, but 2 years ago I was writing a book and also, working full time. I was head of legal at a startup and a lot was expected of me. I was also freelancing, I was also dancing. And so, in these moments when a lot is expected of me, you really have to kind of carve out, like prune out whatever is going to distract you and whatever is going to weigh you down. And that doesn't mean, don't spend time with friends or anything. No, that's important. It's really just paying attention to what gives you energy, what gives you focus, what helps you perform at your best, and really making sure you prioritize so that you can deliver at a higher level. When not a whole lot is expected of me, I can just sit on the couch and watch TV or read a book or something, and I may not work out for days. But when I have a deadline, yes, I'm going for my walk. Yes, I'm making sure I'm making it to dance class because I know all these things help me think better, interact better, and do what's being asked of me. It's a lot like that expression where if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And the reason is you need to set up those systems to take care of yourself. So, to the extent that you can space out your work and see burnout coming around the corner and try to prevent it, that's ideal. But if you find yourself in a busy season that you're just trying to get through, I really recommend just taking, a few minutes and writing down all the things that fill up your cup and give you energy and making sure you're crossing off things off that list as diligently as you are from your work to-do list, because it's the only way that you can take care of yourself and then also still fulfill the obligations that you've agreed to.
I think it goes back to knowing yourself. It's having that awareness of both what's draining you and then what gives you energy, and then taking action against it. So, thank you so much for your time. This was very fun and insightful, and I think that it'll open up a lot of different opportunities and different ways of thinking in terms of, for people listening who are thinking about either creating a portfolio career or trying to decide what's sort of next. I feel like there might be a change coming up, and how can I design that? So I think this has been a very insightful conversation. Where can people connect with you, find your offerings, your book, all of the good stuff?
Yes, my website is joybatra.com. That's Batra. I'm everywhere on social media at Joy Batra, and my book, The Freelance Mindset, it's available on Amazon and anywhere else you can buy books online.
Amazing. Thank you again, Joy.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
What a fun discussion with Joy Batra. I hope you were able to get a few good nuggets as it relates to building a portfolio career and creating your own life path on your terms that allow you to express yourself and your dharma across different outlets in life and career. I love how Joy talks about following what her body was telling her, which led to her being a corporate/creative, and that you can be in both or even across 3 different components, and how you can and should rebalance the components of your portfolio over time as you change, as the market conditions change, as opportunities change as well, and giving yourself that flexibility to make those changes. This conversation was so uplifting and validating for me. I spent the vast majority of my career in a very linear way, and I had always felt like no matter how much I was feeding my desire for things like career variety and autonomy and finding my own way to express myself creatively, while also scaling my responsibilities and driving my own career, which led to me ultimately being more of a hybrid generalist than a specialist, I was still feeling like I was missing something. And so in this in-between and in pursuing my own personal interests and experimenting with my passions around well-being and personal development, I've not only healed from chronic burnout, but also added components to my own portfolio career and learning along the way. What I like, what I don't like, what I want to pursue, what I want to no longer pursue as it relates to my work-life harmony. And so, as Joy mentioned in the conversation, allow yourself to evolve and change. Create a strong foundation so you can take risk and give yourself the experiences, get out of your comfort zone in order for you to learn more about yourself and the world in pursuit of living and embodying your Dharma. I will leave you with this quote from best-selling author Brianna Wiest. A beautiful life is not stumbled upon, it is built, it is chosen, it is nurtured over the years. A beautiful life is made from the heart, not the head. It is not one we can rationalize our way into, it's one that must be felt. A beautiful life is not one that is immediately comfortable, but one grown through the acknowledgement of what is worth being uncomfortable for. It is not one that is easy, it is one that is worth it. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If there's anything that resonated with you, please share it on Instagram and tag me at CaseyCan_ and at HelloFlow Collective. I would love to hear from you. As always, if you enjoy listening to what we discuss on the podcast, please share the show with friends who may also resonate. And don't forget to also subscribe, rate, and review. See you next time on the HelloFlow podcast.